Welcome to Front Office Pros. We are at day 2 of free agency. Just yesterday, we talked about our day 1 reactions, and we're here today to give you our reactions for day 2 of free agency. Before we get started, we're asking you to write in the comments what was your favorite signing or trade on day 2 of free agency. Hike! The Las Vegas Raiders have signed wide receiver Jakobi Meyers to a 3-year contract for $33 million, including $21 million guaranteed, which averages $11 million per year. Joe, what is your reaction to this news?
Yeah, I think I think it's a pretty good landing spot for Jakobi Meyers. I mean, familiarity with the system with McDaniels and the carryover from New England. It's going to be interesting to see how things shake up. With Jimmy G and his ability to support, Devontae Adams, Jakobi Meyers, and guys like Hunter Renfrow. I mean, one nice thing is Darren Waller got traded and is no longer there, so one less mouth to feed. But in terms of good spot for him, we'll see how it does for fantasy, just because he's reuniting with that New England system.
Yeah, it was interesting because there were rumblings of him possibly getting a Christian Kirk type of contract. Like last year, he was maybe the top guy on the market. But honestly, that contract is pretty modest. It really isn't that much. The thing that concerns me about this location is I don't know if he gets any better. He was 36 in targets last year at 96 targets, and he had 54th in routes run, which was 389 routes. So the question is he going to run more routes and will he get more targets now with the Raiders, where he has to share his target share with Hunter Renfrow and Devontae Adams? To me, I don't think he's going to do as well. If anything, he's going to stay as is or possibly worse. He's never went over 1,000 yards. The most amount of touchdowns he's had is 6. So I think, if anything, he regresses. Do you disagree, Joe?
I don't know if he regresses. I think the Raiders are potentially going to throw the ball around more than the Patriots did in previous seasons here. And I think I think being in with the Las Vegas Raiders is going to take a little pressure off of him. He was really the main focal point of that New England offense in years past. They didn't really have many pieces around him. The Raiders have the pieces. I think he should be able to get open, and, Devontae is going to have most of the coverage there. So I think he'll still have opportunities. I don't know if he'll regress. He might kind of stay the same, but there is definitely room to improve.
Real quick, do you like him or Hunter Renfrow better for fantasy?
I'd take Meyers, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting. Obviously, Renfrow had his great season with Carr, and he didn't even have that good of a season last year. So you could be right. Meyers might leapfrog Renfrow.
I just know that, McDaniel's system and the New England system for wide receivers is tough to learn. He's got the advantage there with already kind of knowing it. Renfrow he's still kind of probably learning it. He had last year, but, and then, Jimmy G's coming in knowing the system. That's the thing. Carr didn't really, know the system that well either. He was kind of learning as he went along. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens.
So you alluded to this a little earlier, and it's not a free agency signing, but it's big news, and we're here to talk to you about it. But tight end Darren Waller was traded to the New York Giants for a third-round pick number 11, which happens to be a compensatory pick. Joe, what is your reaction to this news?
Yeah, I was kind of, third-round pick is interesting for the Giants, but I like the move for the Giants. They really need a lot of, they need to surround Daniel Jones with weapons. They still, I don't know what they're doing at receiver. They still don't have much. I know they re-signed Shepard there for 1 year, $1.3 million, but
yeah,
he's an injury-riddled guy. So, having Waller will definitely help the situation. Thought they might have been able to get a little, possibly have acquired him for a little less than a third-round pick with Waller being injured last year. We'll see how he recovers from the injury and plays this year.
Yeah, when it comes to Darren Waller, I found it surprising. I guess when we talked earlier, you weren't surprised, but they just extended him to that contract extension. So he has 3 years, $51 million remaining, but because he's being traded, all the dead cap costs are stuck with the Raiders. So if for whatever reason, Darren Waller can't get healthy. Obviously, he dealt with health issues last year. The Giants can just move away from him. So there's really no risk for them other than losing the third-round pick. Waller over the past 2 seasons has been pretty abysmal. He really hasn't done that much. Hasn't been able to stay healthy either. His best years were back in 2020 and 2021, where he ranked 2 and 3 respectively in PPR settings and was over 1,000 yards. And the 1 year he had 9 touchdowns. I don't know if he's going to get back to those numbers. If anything, I think I would, from a fantasy standpoint, I would say to me his stock rises after this move.
Yeah, I would agree with that, just because I think he should be more of a focal point with the Giants, than he was with the Raiders. There's just a lot of guys now, especially now bringing in Jakobi Meyers. There's just a lot of guys to throw the ball to, and it's going to be interesting to see if Garoppolo can support all of them. But, you kind of being surprised on the move, this is just kind of what Josh McDaniels does. As being a Broncos fan, seeing him as his first-time head coach, he trades away Jake Cutler, trades away Brandon Marshall. We're kind of seeing that same blueprint. Gets rid of Derek Carr, brings in his guy that he wants, and now Darren Waller is being traded. So,
yeah, I guess an old dog can't learn new tricks. But when it comes to Waller, I think you're right. He'll be a vocal point, and he'll really be the number 1 passing option in that offense. So we'll see if Daniel Jones starts to target him and what wide receivers they end up bringing in to support that receiving room. But heading over to our next part of news is Allen Lazard. He signed with the New York Jets on a 4-year contract for $44 million, including $22 million guaranteed, averaging $11 million per year. Joe, what is your thoughts on this move?
Yeah, the only way I like this for the Jets is if Rodgers is for sure coming. And I think the Jets are crazy for doing this before the Rodgers commitment, man. If I was the GM with the Jets, I'd be like, hey, Rodgers, you don't have the right to give us a wish list right now until you tell us right now for sure you're not retiring, you're not staying with the Packers, you're coming to the Jets, make that commitment to us, and then we'll look into, fulfilling your wish list.
Yeah, it's just crazy how much Aaron Rodgers is holding the Jets hostage right now. I mean, they're just absolutely desperate to find a quarterback. They have no options. If anything, maybe Jimmy G could have been an option for them with ties with Robert Saleh, but that's long gone. So Rodgers is really the only option for them. The thing is with Lazard, you're right. I like it a little bit better if Rodgers is there, but even if he is there, I mean, people were really excited about him this year, and he did have his best year. He had 100 targets. He ranked 35th in PPR. He had over 750 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he had an okay year, but I don't think he'll ever get into that wide receiver 2 discussion.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, honestly, the Jets have such great talent, young talent with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, receiver 2. I mean, I know Lazard's going to come in and kind of overtake that Corey Davis role in the offense. And Davis never was able to really stay healthy. So it'll be interesting to see how much involvement he will have. But yeah, you're probably right. I mean, I was one of those people that was excited for Lazard, have him in our Dynasty League. And, he did have his best year, but 100 targets in the Jets offense, I'm not sure if he gets that.
Yeah, I mean, the hype was there this offseason when, Davante Adams was gone. There was such a void of targets, and people thought, okay, this is Lazard's time to shine. He got better, but not enough of a shine to make you be like, oh, I have to have him. If anything, he's this kind of asset right now.
Yeah, I mean, it does give them a big receiver. He's great at the contested catches. That's kind of what they need him for, because they already have a couple of guys that can get separation with Wilson and Elijah Moore. So if they ever wanted to take the, just a jump ball fly route to Lazard, he's good with coming down with those.
So now we're going to do a rundown of the players that signed last night. We post our videos at around 9 o'clock at night. So there are some deals that happen after we go through the posting process. So we want to run through some of those guys that we missed and give you our thoughts. So Defensive tackle Dre'Mont Jones, he signed with the Seattle Seahawks for 3 years, $51.5 million with $30 million guaranteed. Defensive tackle Zach Allen, I know they list him as a defensive end, but he's really an interior defensive lineman. He signed with the Broncos, reuniting with Vance Joseph for 3 years, $45.7 million, $32.5 guaranteed. Defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson signed with the Cleveland Browns for 4 years, $57 million with $27.5 guaranteed. Linebacker Eric Kendricks, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings, is now signing with the LA Chargers for 2 years, $13.25 million. And then some kicker news, Joe. Kicker Matt Gay signed one of the largest kicker contracts ever. Not the highest, but one of. And he's going to the Indianapolis Colts for 4 years, $22.5 million. What is your thoughts with these group of guys?
Yeah, well, kickers are people too, Steve. They got to get their contracts, I guess. But, of course, as a Broncos fan, sad to see Dre'Mont, leave. But, the Broncos weren't going to give him the money he wanted, and happy to see, he got a decent contract with the Seattle Seahawks. And then, for the Broncos to lose Dre'Mont, but replace him with Zach Allen, man, I love that move. He really had his best year last year, and I think the best are yet to come for Zach Allen. He's kind of, people are comparing him kind of the baby J.J. Watt because he played alongside him, and he just got that high motor and plays well against the run. And hopefully, I'd like to see him get his sack numbers up when he comes to Denver.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, the defensive tackle market is just going bananas. I mean, you're seeing all three of these guys get paid top dollar. We already saw Daron Payne and Javon Hargrave get signed. So this defensive tackle market is really getting a lot of money, and I think it's not going to stop. With Dre'Mont Jones, Joe, I don't know. He didn't really get all that much more with Zach compared to Zach Allen. We're only talking about a few more million, and he actually got less guaranteed than Zach Allen. So I think if the Broncos wanted to keep Dre'Mont, they probably could have chose him over Allen. I mean, he had his best year this year with 47 tackles, which was a career high, tied his career high in sacks at 6.5. I think they're similar players, but I think what wins out here is that Zach Allen has that familiarity in Vance Joseph's defense, and I think that's why they would prioritize him over a guy like Dre'Mont.
Yeah, it makes sense. Plus, I mean, Dre'Mont has had some injury concerns as well. Had a hip injury at the end of last year, kind of missed some games. I don't know if Zach Allen has also had injury history as well, but
he only played 13 games last year, but I mean, he had a great season. 47 total tackles, 5.5 sacks, which was his career high. Like you said, you'd like to see him get a couple more sacks, hopefully, in Denver. Tomlinson's just a big guy. He's a mover, so he's not a guy who lights up the stat sheet. He always gets paid. He's just one of those things he doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And then Kendricks is a really interesting location for the Chargers. I mean, he has been one of the best linebackers, super consistent for years. I actually thought he would get a little bit more money than he did. But I think he's going to do really well in that Chargers defense. They haven't had a linebacker like him. Drew Tranquill had a really good season. I am surprised that it looks like they won't be bringing him back and they're going to go with Kendricks. But, I mean, Kendricks has had over 100 tackles almost every year in his career, and last year had 137 tackles. So that's kind of interesting. What are your thoughts? Any thoughts on Kendricks there?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Kendricks. Unfortunately, he's got to go to a division rival. But like you, I was kind of surprised that he didn't end up getting more money because, Chargers got a good deal on him because, I mean, like you said, the guy just simply produces, and even at his bit of an older age, he was still plenty productive.
So going over to the next wave of players that signed, kind of the PM time of day one, we've got quarterback Jameis Winston going back to the New Orleans Saints for 1 year, $8 million. You got safety Jimmie Ward reuniting with his former defensive coordinator, signing with the Houston Texans at 2 years, $13 million, joining DeMeco Ryans. You've got Marcus Davenport. I find this is an interesting name here. Leaving the Saints, going to the Minnesota Vikings for 1 year, $13 million. We've been hearing rumblings about Zadarius Smith possibly wanting to no longer play for them. So it could be a replacement there. Safety Vonn Bell is now a member of the Carolina Panthers for 3 years, $22.5 million with $13 million guaranteed. And then linebacker Kaden Elliss going from the Saints, reuniting with his defensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons for 3 years, $21.5 million, $11 million guaranteed. Joe, what jumps off the page for these guys?
Yeah, I thought one thing I thought was interesting. The fact that Jameis is going back to the Saints. I really thought that they would kind of move off of him and he might want to go elsewhere. But he's back on the 1 year, $8 million. It seems like a pretty fair deal for him. But yeah, you're right though. The Vikings move for Marcus Davenport, that definitely jumps up. That was a bit of a surprising move there for them to go out and get him. But like you said, it's looking like the end of Zadarius Smith's time in Minnesota.
Yeah, I agree with you. When it comes to Winston, I think it almost kind of tells me that Winston's just content with being a backup now. He just doesn't have any desire to try to find a starting job because obviously it's Carr's job. I would have thought that he would have maybe wanted to go elsewhere, but instead he decides to just get $8 million and just to ride the bench. And like I was saying with Davenport, I mean, he had 9 sacks, in the 2021 season. Just didn't really do well last year. And former first-round pick. I remember watching the draft and the Saints traded up for him, and they gave, I believe, a future first to get him, which you don't normally see for a defensive player. But he should step right in. I think this is your prove-it deal to a T, hoping to cash in big next year after his contract's up. So, and then these other guys, I think Vonn Bell is a little bit older. I don't expect too much from him. And Kaden Elliss, he's not a household name. He really filled in for Pete Werner. He's coming in at linebacker. But what I do find interesting is, Rashaan Evans had such a great year last year for them. He had a ton of tackles, and he's a free agent. And he has familiarity with Arthur Smith. He was in Tennessee, but Kaden Elliss has that familiarity with the defensive coordinator, to me, it tells me they're moving off of Rashaan Evans, which I'm a little surprised about.
Yeah, that would be pretty surprising. I mean, I like Rashaan Evans. He's a physical linebacker and really, really tackles well. I mean, be interesting to see where he goes, but I think, Vonn Bell, I think he's going to be a good player. I like him. You kind of just skipped over him there, but
I did.
I actually, I thought he actually might get a little more than what he got. Honestly, I think I know he's one of those aging veteran players, but he's still a solid safety. He was a guy that I was interested in the Broncos getting, but they've spent so much money elsewhere, couldn't happen.
So now we're going to transition over to the players that were signed on day 2. So starting with the offensive group, the first player is wide receiver Michael Thomas. He already had a deal, but it was sort of a restructure, new deal type of aspect. It was definitely different. But he got a 1 year, $10 million contract to come back to the Saints. I believe it can go up to $14 million. Quarterback Taylor Heinicke went over to the Atlanta Falcons. He got a 2 year, $20 million contract with $6.32 million guaranteed. Running back Jeff Wilson and running back Raheem Mostert returned back to the Miami Dolphins. Wilson got 2 years, $8.2 million with $530,000 guaranteed, and Mostert got 2 years, $7.6 million and $2.2 guaranteed. And then running back Samaje Perine signed with the Denver Broncos for 2 years, $7.5 million. We've started to see the running back market. The gears are starting to move ever so slightly. We also saw that Rashaad Penny, we don't know the terms yet, but he signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. We saw Boston Scott return back to the Philadelphia Eagles. Another interesting one is Andy Dalton. He signed with the Carolina Panthers on a 2 year deal, $10 million, which includes $8 million fully guaranteed. And then we also saw wide receiver Noah Brown, the former Dallas Cowboy, go over to the Houston Texans for a 1 year deal. I believe it's around $2 million. So, Joe, a couple offensive players came off the board in free agency. Nobody too glamorous. We're still waiting for some of the big names. But what jumps out to you with this group?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting with the Atlanta Falcons with the signing of Taylor Heinicke. Um, where they kind of paid him, it's almost if they paid him to come in and compete for the starting job with Desmond Ridder. I'm kind of interested to see, do they give Heinicke a shot to start, or are they going to roll out with Ridder? I mean, they got to look at Ridder at the end of last year. As expected, he was kind of in it, little inconsistent as a rookie, but I don't know what they kind of just threw him out there, so I'm not sure what they were expecting, but definitely interested in seeing the kind of quarterback battle that happens in training camp there. And then, you're mentioning the slow turn of the running back market. Of course, none of the big names have come off the board yet, but, Perine to the Broncos, I like that at signing for the Broncos. And then, Miami continues to be that fantasy running back nightmare with these two guys staying back in Miami, and just fantasy owners just now scratching their heads like, what do we do with that backfield?
Yeah, with Desmond Ridder, he played 4 games last year, and he did okay. I mean, he threw for 708 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I agree. The Heinicke signing is very expensive backup type of territory that could push Ridder as a starter, but I feel like Arthur Smith is on the hot seat. So it's just kind of an odd move, I feel like, from a quarterback standpoint. I don't really know what Atlanta's doing. I think of all the teams out there, they might be one of the more head-scratching ones. For me personally, we'll see if they end up drafting a rookie in the first round. But, again, they drafted Ridder last year. They have Heinicke now. So that'll be interesting. I'm with you. What a headache when it comes to Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. It was just frustrating in a way because, of all the places a running back could go, like a Miles Sanders or David Montgomery, from a fantasy standpoint, that seemed like the best location. There was a complete void at the running back position, and they decided to go back and get the same guys that they had before. They were somewhat productive. So I guess, and it's very cheap, so they don't want to, spend a lot of money for the running back position. But definitely frustrating that we're basically round 2 of all this. And, you didn't talk about Perine at all, Joe, but I really like the Perine move. I think Perine actually he came in for Joe Mixon for a few games, and he looked even better than Mixon at times. He's got that receiving ability. He runs hard. We were just talking about yesterday how you were hoping that they would bring a running back in and possibly, let Javonte Williams not, rest the entire year. I don't know if Perine is the type of player that signals that could happen, but he can definitely carry the load, and he's a definitely interesting fantasy option because he could be the starter for quite a bit of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to see what his role is going to be. Is he going to be the starter? I do think they're going to bring Latavius Murray back. I think with the Sean Payton connection, Latavius Murray has said he's interested in coming back to Denver. So it's going to be interesting how it shakes out. But I do like the running and playing style of Perine, man. He really runs hard and can break a lot of tackles. And like you said, he's good in the passing game as well as a good pass blocker as well.
Yeah, some head scratchers for me. Rashaad Penny going to the Philadelphia Eagles, like, I can't stay healthy. And I mean, he definitely, when he has been able to play, he can get I think his yards per carry is pretty high. So maybe that offensive line is so good. We saw, the Kelsey, not Travis Kelsey, but Jason Kelsey come back to the Philadelphia Eagles, famous center for them. And he was such a huge part of their offense last year, bringing him back. And I don't know. I mean, maybe Rashaad Penny ends up being a good player. I would think that they would be interested in another running back. That was a shocker. And then for Michael Thomas, he's a guy that I have been out on for quite some time. And I just think he's, I don't know. He just can't stay healthy. You can't rely upon the guy. I talked about last year. I think after week 1 or week 2, I told him you need to trade him right away while you have that window. And then he got injured and then he was done. So coming back to the Saints, he's got Derek Carr. Derek Carr's got now Thomas and Olave, as long as Thomas can stay healthy. Will be interesting to see how he does. I thought he was going to be on the move, but he decides to stay.
Yeah, I agree. I expected Michael Thomas to be on the move as well. Kind of surprised they're keeping him around. It just after having him around with all the injuries and it's really hurt them in past years. Just kind of surprised they didn't want to just turn the page and look to get somebody else in there. But yeah, I mean, Eagles, man, it's so interesting. You get Jason Kelce back, which is huge for that offensive line, but you're gonna lose Miles Sanders, and you sign Rashaad Penny, who can't stay on the field, and then you bring Boston Scott in to be there with Kenneth Gainwell. It's just, I don't know, so interesting what they're doing with the backfield.
So far, the running back market and how it's developed has been very underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, it started off with the franchise tags. I mean, you had Pollard, Barkley, and Josh Jacobs all get franchise tagged.
Yep.
And then here it is, the guys like Miles Sanders and David Montgomery's of the world that we'd love to see get signed. They're just staying out there.
It's just crazy. So heading over to the defensive side, so this is our last slide for day 2. We saw Stephon Gilmore get traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 5th-round pick. Quarterback James Bradberry re-signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he was regarded as the top corner on the market. He signed for 3 years, $38 million with $20 guaranteed. Defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi re-signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers for 3 years, $28.75 million. And then safety Donovan Wilson re-signed with the Dallas Cowboys for 3 years, $24 million. And then linebacker Leighton Vander Esch, he also re-signed. A lot of re-signs here. He re-signed with the Dallas Cowboys. So Dallas has definitely been busy. And then some other moves that you may not be aware of, but Kaiser White, he went to the former Philadelphia Eagle linebacker, had a really, really good season. He's now going to the Arizona Cardinals to a similar deal that Leighton Vander Esch signed. He also signed for 2 years for $11 million. We also see Azeez Al-Shaair. This is not a household name. He was on the 49ers, and he didn't get much snap share time because he played behind Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. But Al-Shaair is now going to Tennessee, reuniting with the GM of the Tennessee Titans, who formerly was with the San Francisco 49ers. We're still waiting on the terms of that contract, but definitely an interesting one. Joe, any of those deals jump out to you?
Yeah, one thing that surprised me for sure was, Bradberry going back to the Eagles, and it really wasn't that much money, honestly. I thought he was going to get more. He, after he was, like you said, he was regarded the top corner in this free agency class. He's a really great against man coverage and had a great year again with the Eagles. He kind of had the 1-year deal with them to prove it, and he definitely proved it. I thought he was going to get, possibly paid somewhere around the 14 to 15 million per year, but it was just over the 12 million that he got over the 3 years there.
Yeah, you were telling me just how good Bradberry was, especially in man coverage last year. He played really well across Darius Slay. Across Darius Slay. It'll be interesting to see. There have been rumors that Darius Slay may get traded, which I'm kind of surprised in because, their secondary was one of the reasons why Philadelphia did so well last year. And as far as Gilmore is concerned, he's getting older. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, Joe, but to me, I feel like there's going to come a point where the tires fall off the wagon wheel, and I feel like we might be getting there with Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, we could, but what's interesting is he actually played pretty well last year with the Colts. There was plenty of times he made some big plays and some clutch moments, and at times played some lockdown corner. I mean, I know he's older, and you're probably right. At some point, the wheels are probably going to fall off, but heck, for a 5th-round pick, and I think it was a conditional one. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, he'll be 33 years old in September, so I think this is going to be his last stop in the NFL. We'll have to see. And then, Larry Ogunjobi, again, not a household name. You might remember him. I want to say it was last offseason. The Chicago Bears gave him a huge contract, but then surprisingly did not pass the medical check. So then the deal went nowhere, completely gone. And then he signed a prove-it deal with the Steelers, is now returning back with him. So happy for him to be able to get a long-term deal. But it was a good player for them last year.
Yeah, good for him to. I like when these guys go on these prove-it deals and then they show out, and then teams are rewarding them with a little bit of a longer-term contract and getting them paid. I do want to go back to one player you mentioned there, Steve, and that's Azeez Al-Shaair, who signed with the Titans to replace David Long, who they just lost yesterday. I think, and like you said, not a lot of people might not know this guy. He's kind of been behind Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, hasn't really been able to get on the field, but this guy is fast and physical and plays great downhill linebacker, and it's a great get for the Titans.
Yeah, I want to say that for Azeez Al-Shaair, he had torn his MCL or dealt with some MCL issues last season, which made it so that he wasn't on the field as much. But yeah, he's a talented player, and people should really see how talented he is next season.
Yeah, I think he should just go right in and start and be the fill-in starter for David Long. But if that's so, people will definitely hear his name more, and he's going to definitely become more of a household name that you recognize.
So that does it for our NFL Free Agency Day 2 reactions, where we went over the most prominent free agents who signed either last night or today. If you enjoy this content, we ask you to please like this video, comment below, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also recently have joined Apple and Spotify podcasts, so follow us there as well. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.